What I might actually do is to actually just start by getting the guys to introduce themselves, who you are, what your company does, and I'll start with AJ.
So I'm AJ, I'm one of the co-founders of EasyCollect. What we do is we're a software play that helps businesses to get paid faster. What that really means is our vision was to solve that messy middle. When businesses try and get paid faster, there's a lot of processes that were manual, and we felt that we could, our software could automate those processes, streamline those processes, and when we pitched to Sydney Angels and all the members, what we felt was a lot of the members were actually running businesses themselves, and they could really resonate with that message. And for us, it was a very easy pitch. They came to us and said, "Yep, we know this is a real problem. We see it happening in every business. We'd love to get on board." So for us, this journey's been 9.5 years. As Adrian mentioned, we just sold a business about 4.5 months ago. And Adrian was on our board, so he's been there from almost day one.
Hi guys, my name's Harry. I'm from Mary Technology. We're a legal technology company that essentially helps lawyers extract all the facts from their documents and basically tries to reorder them and help them actually get to the ones that they care about straight away. So instead of going from top to bottom of maybe 10, 15, 20,000 documents, we let the lawyers not only get to those facts, but actually also verify them as well. And I think when you think about AI in legal or other industries, you might typically think about sort of like asking a question and getting an answer, but in complex litigation, it's not so much about asking a question and getting an answer. Your job's to understand all the documents, all the facts, and really understand what kind of angle you're going to take for your argument when you get to that litigation. And so it's all about helping them do that fast, but also built in an experience that allows them to actually have confidence in what is being produced by our software as well.
Hey, I'm Sai. I'm the CEO of Crosscourt AI. We build AI systems for real estate and private credit firms across the APAC region. Predominantly what we do is we help firms underwrite deals very effectively with the new AI technologies that are available. So that's financial modeling, that's creation of papers, that's asset management once the asset's been acquired. Australia is one of the largest real estate markets in the world, and that's going to continue growing over time. So much equity in this market that we think there's going to be continual reinvestment. So if we can allow firms to be able to invest in more assets effectively with these AI technologies, we think we're just going to end up with a more efficient capital market. So that's kind of the fundamental thesis of what we're trying to solve for.
When you're raising capital, it's not easy, right? You go and talk to lots of people. What made you choose to raise capital via Sydney Angels, and how did you find the experience? Why did you pick to Sydney Angels to sort of partner with you through this?
Yeah, totally. Of course, we talked to many different venture capital firms and family offices and many different groups looking for capital into Crosscourt. But for us, it was actually quite simple. Like if you think about AI companies, one of the most valuable things you can have is speed. The most effective way to have speed at top of the pipeline is to be able to have warm connections through venture crowd, through Sydney Angels. There's a massive investor universe. We're talking thousands and thousands. I think you may have told me this number, I've forgotten, but we're talking 5,000 plus investors across the network who have deep connections into real estate, private credit, and those warm connections have been massive for our business. And that's allowed us to have great conversations at scale, and I think that scale will lead us to being able to grow this company.
For us in the early stages, we weren't really keen at all on sort of traditional venture capital. And maintain autonomy, but also from the same perspective as well, actually work with founders and people who have built businesses. And I think it was just a really attractive proposal to come to you guys. And ultimately, it's really worked out that way because you don't get people, especially in the early stages, telling you how to do things, but it's the guidance and the advice and the experience that they've all had. Because I think, from my perspective, the most important thing with a startup is obviously, don't die. And you come across a lot of people with experience on, it's more about what not to do than it is necessarily what to do. That what to do is different for everyone, but avoiding those major pitfalls as well. And then, just absolute nuggets from a wide range of people at Venture Crowd and Sydney Angels in terms of how we should approach different problems, etc. And that's just been like incredible.
Sydney Angels has a really good brand. Like, if you raise money through Sydney Angels, you can go to your next round and say, look, I've had these group of individuals who've backed us. It makes that next conversation much, much easier. And talking to other founders, we know that once Sydney Angels in once, they tend to come in a second, a third, a fourth time. And for us, that was a really big thing. We did about, I think, 6 or 7 rounds of funding over the last 9 years. And I know Sydney Angels and the Sidecar Fund, they all came in, maybe not all the members, but at least some of the members came in every round across those 7 rounds. So for us, we felt it was a partner there for the entire journey. And the second thing that we heard about Sydney Angels was you have people in that member community who maybe want to get involved in the business, who have some experience in that vertical. And we had, I'm not sure if Justin's here today, but he was one of our early advisors. We had Adrian, we had Greg, who was on the committee involved in the business. We've had a number of Sydney Angels who've actually been either working in the business, on the board, a advisor. And for us, it was a really invaluable asset. It was like, we have really smart people who are running businesses or working in businesses in their own right, who can actually make us successful and make themselves successful as a result. So I think, on like hindsight, I didn't know all of that, but I knew some of that, and that was why it was a good, why we wanted to raise money from Sydney Angels.
You touched on something there, which is about the DD process as well, and that experience. One of the feedbacks sometimes we get from founders is actually the Sydney Angels DD process is too hard and too rigorous, and actually don't want to go through that. Can you tell us what your experience was, and did you get any other benefits? Did it make you look at your business or think about your business differently as a result of going through the DD?
When we raised money with Sydney Angels, we had to have some runs on the board. I think we had about $300,000 of revenue when we first raised money. And I think that was a really important milestone that we got asked. Can you prove product market fit? Can you prove you could actually bring funds? Like, can you actually scale this business? And they really honed down on that. Like, show me, is this repeatable? Is it scalable? Is it global? And I think that was the thing that probably was the most useful for us. It made us question, are we building a business for making a good profit, or are we building a business to scale and to give these investors a good exit? And so I think that DD process for us made us think about how to run a bigger and have a bigger vision, I would say, more than anything else. And then on the journey, at every stage of that journey, we had different members getting involved in the business to help us get to that next milestone. But the DD process itself, once there was conviction, it moved really, really quickly. So there's a high bar to get that conviction. But once you have 2 or 3 members who have conviction, it's just, guys, let's not add more red tape. Let's go quick. I think we raised our entire round in, was it like a week or 2? Which is amazing in terms of fundraising, because Raj and I want to get back into the business. And that was like one of the best experiences we had in terms of raising money. I think we were oversubscribed in that first round as well.
We were.
The DD process was tough, as mentioned, but incredibly necessary. I think, we were at a stage where you're really deep in the business and you're not really thinking about how do you structure everything that you've got to actually make that presentable to your investors. And to be honest, before it was even really confirmed, that entire process throughout that DD really prepared us for not just the rest of that round, but the other rounds we've had since. And it's like invaluable lessons that you're learning in terms of, what actually investors expect, what you need to have in a data room. And so it gave us a lot of confidence. And I think Sydney Angels for us was probably like the first, even before it was confirmed, but the first sort of major investor. There'd been like a couple of angels that were in that round, but once we had gone through that process, closing the rest of the round was infinitely easier because everything was actually in place. And like you mentioned, it actually was definitely the most rigorous process that we had to go through. And the other investors, kind of then asked for all of that. And we were just like, here it is. And then, and so it's, it really helped us understand exactly what's necessary, and it's prepared us for the other rounds that we've gone through.
I think the depth and the speed was unique. Like, I think, obviously we talked to a few different groups, but I think I talked to,
and we had some robust conversations, didn't we?
We were trying to apply for the StartMate program. We did Launch Lab, and then we were applying for StartMate. we got a decent read that we were going to get into StartMate, but for StartMate to match our valuation, we needed to be able to get the venture crowd city angel round done before that. This was second week of December, and everyone was ready to go on holiday. But Adrian and Richard and the rest of the group were like, all right, look, this is necessary for us. Let's try to get this done. And obviously in that, it was still the same depth of analysis. You still had to do all the requisite diligence, but to have someone in your corner that early saying, look, if we want to invest in you, we'll absolutely help you with this, I think it was very supportive.
What about when things are not going well? Having the group there, knowing you can call people, have you had to use it?
Yeah, no, of course. I think every startup has problems, and I think that being able to have the depth of experience, you can't synthesize experience. Like for us, so we've got industry experience, but we're first-time founders, and I think that that means that a lot of the problems we're dealing with are sometimes that we're seeing these problems for the first time. So being able to look back at the depth of network you have in City Angels and Venture Crowd, and you've got 30 years of experience or 20 years of experience on average across 5,000 members. There's someone who's seen these problems before, and that's incredibly helpful to us.
Having people to sense check whether that it's how you're feeling is warranted or not. Again, and with the breadth of experience between all the people at Sydney Angels, it makes it really easy. We work with both sort of like enterprise level law firms as well as like sole practitioners, barristers, etc. And when it came to sort of structuring enterprise deals, and just sort of trying to understand how we should do that when we're speaking to them, is what they're sort of asking from us, to be expected, or are they trying to sort of almost take advantage of the technology and ask you to do things that maybe isn't in your best commercial interests? Having people where you can go and just again, I've been through that and verify it is probably. There's probably been quite a few therapy sessions. I'm not sure what you might call them.
I think if you're a potential investor, you all want an exit. And we really saw the value of Sydney Angels. And when we were going to sell the business, there was probably a period of about 3 weeks where we were negotiating with the buyer. It was a French company, and we didn't know what we were doing at that point. It's the first time we're selling a business, and we called on to the network of our investors, and Sydney Angels and Adrian specifically were on a call with us every single night for probably about 3 weeks, and we were dealing with Paris. So it was, the timings was like midnight, it was early mornings, and just how do you get a deal done? How do you negotiate the bits that you should walk away from versus the ones that you should say, okay, these are like okay to accept. That value that the network provided is just, you can't put a dollar to that. Sydney Angels has so many unique individuals that if you just call out to them, or even if you say, hey, I need a quick bridge round, I need to raise some money, people come out of the woodwork and they just support you. They support you on a personal level. And COVID was the same thing. COVID, was a tough time. We were trying to raise money at the right valuation, and we said, you know what, we have hundreds of members at Sydney Angels, let's go put it on a call. And they just say, look, within a few minutes, we believe in you. You guys are that jockey that's running the show. We know it's a tough time. Here's some money to help you for the next 6 months. And that's the kind of thing that you can do quickly with Sydney Angels. And, for us, we then feel, okay, how do we give back? And so when we did the deal, we wanted to make sure that the Sydney Angels team, did well. And that was something that we kept on, to us was very, very important. But yeah, to answer your question more specifically, it's that. It's just, there's such a varied mix of people. It helps a business do much better.
I was going to ask you a separate question about the sales process.
If you want to sell your business, you need to be very purposeful about it. Like, you need to put it out there to the universe. I want this to happen. You can't just say, hey, like everyone says, just run a business, put your head down, and exit will come. And that might happen, but I feel that might happen to 1% or 0.1% of the businesses. But for us, Raj and I said, we want to keep building a business and growing a good business, but we also felt it's been 9 years. We have investors who put money into the business. We want to give them an exit as well. And Raj and I continue in the business, by the way. Like, we want to keep growing, but we knew that this is the time to return money to our investors. And I think you have to be very purposeful about it. You need to identify who you want to sell to. So, even today, map your exit, like who could buy your business in the next, 7 to 10 years. Build towards that. I think you can't be impatient to sell, but you have to be purposeful. Like you need to say, hey, this is what I want, this is the outcome, this is what I'll accept. I need to engage professional help to get there, whether it be a advisor to sell the business or not. But I'm going to not be impatient. If it doesn't happen today, it doesn't happen next year, but it just has to be don't expect it just to sit back and it happen. And I said to Raj when we started the business, let's identify 5 potential people we can sell the business to. And if you have that in the back of your mind, it just helps you a little bit in some of your decision making. Mind you, when we sold it, it wasn't too late. It was completely random. On a separate note, it was a LinkedIn. So don't ignore LinkedIn is my comment here, because the person that ended up finally acquiring the business literally messaged me on LinkedIn on a Thursday evening. I was coming back from the gym, and I'm like, "Who's this guy messaging me on LinkedIn?" And normally I just ignore those messages, and that was the CEO of the company that actually bought the business.
In the room tonight, there's some existing investors and there's people who are considering investing. So for those people in the room who haven't yet committed to the fund, what would be a message you would want to give to them? Apart from if they invest, they get to invest in you and you.
The Sydney Angels process, as it's been mentioned many times, it's incredibly tough. Like, you saw those numbers, but it is vetted very well. And as Adrian sort of mentioned, majority of startups don't make it. And so I think that's really important. I could never imagine trying to do it, myself. And having a vehicle like Sydney Angels and Venture Crowd to actually help get that kind of diversification, I think is really important. And certainly, when you start out looking for investors, you're looking at everyone. And I can still tell you that Sydney Angels was the hardest process to go through. And I think from an investor perspective, that's exactly what you want it to be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that the robustness of the process, like think about like the different components of the business. You have the financial DD, you got the technical DD, you got the growth DD. I think all of those different components, I think, were done at the depth that you can almost compare it to like private equity, right? You're actually like saying, okay, like if we actually break this down and say how do we actually analyze all the risks of this business? I think it was done in all of those different components. I couldn't agree more. I think the average startup, your probability of long-term success is actually relatively low. So the best thing you can do is have the best people in your corner for that. I think we've got Adrian on our board also, but I think just the broader network, it does give you a higher probability of success. I think that the diversification is critically important also. If 3% of the companies are coming down the funnel, that tells you there's a fairly robust process to get down there. And I think that if there's only going to be 1 to 3 of those companies that are going to provide the vast majority of return, then it should give you some comfort that at least those companies have been done incredibly robustly.
And that process, made us better as a startup. Like I sort of said, once we had gone through that Sydney Angels process, getting the rest of the investment, felt significantly easier. It's like doing a really hard test before you do the exam kind of thing. And so I think as well from that investor perspective, Sydney Angels are a multiplier. They make the startups they invest in better.
For me, I think if you are if you're a bit more passive and say, I want to spread my risk with a diversified portfolio, but still have that rigor, as you mentioned, of investments and professional managers running it. I think from that point of view, it makes a lot of sense because it's a really scary thing to do the alternative. There's a track record there, and the bigger thing is I think it's diversified, right? Because individual stocks today, I think it's a bit of a gamble. So banks were earning you 4%. So if you can beat the bank return, then why not?